Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to welcome you to the Chinatown Storytelling Centre for this very special event. As part of Asian Heritage Month, we're proud to host Transplant Titans, a powerful conversation with four of BC's most respected transplant surgeons. I'm honored to recognize our presenting sponsor, KPMG. We've got Elio and Walter. Thanks for being here. Open Road, Christian Chia, and for being our supporting sponsor. And Charlie Kim. It wouldn't have been possible without you, so thanks very much for being here. These doctors are leaders in heart, lung, liver, and kidney transplantation, and they've made a profound impact on the lives and families across our province and beyond. This event is especially meaningful to us here in Chinatown. In a place where Asian Canadians were once excluded from practicing medicine and from so many other professions, it's incredibly moving to witness how far we've come. Today's conversation honors not those just in medical excellence, but the resilience, compassion, and determination that got us here. If you can stay after the event, we invite you to explore the exhibits around you. They're filled with stories of those who paved the way before us, challenging exclusion and building a more welcoming community for all. For the first time ever, these four outstanding Asian Canadian surgeons are coming together to share their personal stories, the challenges they've faced, and the lives they've helped save, and what continues to drive them in their work. It's a rare opportunity to hear directly from the people behind the surgeries and to reflect on the progress we've made toward equity and inclusion in this country. To help guide the conversation, we're thrilled to welcome Sheona McDonald as our moderator. Sheona is a Vancouver-based filmmaker, writer, and director with a long list of acclaimed projects to her name, including Dead Man's Switch, Into the Light, and Capturing a Short Life. She also directed and co-wrote the documentary series Transplant Stories for the Knowledge Network. Our speakers today are featured in the series, which I highly recommend you see. In leading this incredible project, Sheona got to know these doctors and played an instrumental role in bringing their remarkable journeys to the big screen. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Sheona McDonald.
Wow, such a pleasure to be here and nice to see familiar faces and new faces. Thank you, Carol. As Carol said, I had the pleasure of being immersed in transplant for the last couple of years and just this amazing, connected, really remarkable world. And so we're going to start off with a few statistics, things you may or may not know about transplant. Then we're going to watch a couple of clips and then I'll introduce our guests. So some stats. BC stands at the forefront of organ transplantation in Canada. We were talking earlier, and it's not every province that has a transplant program, but BC has set a record in 2023 with 563 organ transplants, including new records for kidney, liver, lung, and heart procedures. Since 2021, BC has been a leader in deceased organ donation in Canada, with 28.8 organ donors per million, compared to the national rate of 19.2. BC was the first province in Canada to establish an official organ donor registry and the first to introduce technology that allows for online registration. And there's people here who can tell you how to do that if you want to after. And so the four exceptional guests that we have today, we're going to watch two short video clips, one that has Dr. Nguan and one that has Dr. Yi, both from this series, which is available on Knowledge Network. And then we'll bring the guests in.
We're close to 380 transplants or more every year, and 60%-ish of our transplant work is from deceased donors, and the rest are from living donation. That number changes on a year-to-year basis.
Turn our light on. And turn our overhead lights off.
There's always someone on the wait list, right? Our wait list is 500 strong.
Gas on.
There's not enough donors. So how can we generate more donors is always the pressing question.
We're all here because we stand on the shoulders of other people. My father came to Canada in 1956. No language, no education, came off a little farm in China. He was an orphan because of the war. the drive was that, although I may have a terrible life, I want my children to have a better life. He passed away in Vancouver hospital. I walk by the room where he died every day. You think about the people you owe a debt to, and you always question yourself, did you pay that off? Of course, the debt is unpayable. So the only way to pay it off is to pay it forward.
Thank you.
I have an incredible sense of privilege doing what I do.
You have a big order, so make it generous.
And I think to myself, how lucky I am, right, that you can make a difference. It's more than just a job.
First, I would like to welcome Dr. Anson Cheung to the stage. He is the surgical director for the cardiac transplant program of BC and other things. Dr. Peter Kim, the medical director of the liver transplant program of BC. Dr. Chris Nguan, surgical director of the kidney transplant program at VGH. I don't know how Chris snuck this in, but it says he's also the director of the Surgical Technologies Experimental Laboratory and Advanced Robotics Stellar Facility at VGH. So, I don't know. The others, you have to get in there with your titles. Last but not least, Dr. John Yee, medical director of the Lung Transplant Program of BC. And I just want to acknowledge, I think Dr. Stephen Cheung is in the audience somewhere. He didn't make the series. He was in the demo, and then we talked, but he was already gone. So we'll explore things generally, but this is an important conversation and starting place for future generations and more in-depth exploration. Transplant is a different process and a different surgical procedure for each organ, but I will ask each of you to just give me a very brief description of layman's terms. What is transplant?
The transplant basically is what we do is that we place an organ that's been failing. And all major organs nowadays actually we have the opportunity and method and technology that actually could revive them. And that would be the simple term that I would use.
Yeah. Anything to add? Anyone have anything to add to that? No?
I think the only thing I would like to add is this is a system. It's not something that we just do as surgeons.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't simply put an organ into someone who had a failing organ. We require a whole team, a society, and organization to actually make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm sure that if you have watched your video, you understand that the process of this is not a simple. I think it takes years to actually to refine to get to the stage that we are at.
Yeah. And of course requires the generosity of donors and a donor program in that system.
I think so. It really takes a village to make the transplant work. I think, as you mentioned, the importance of the donor, because transplant is not possible without donor organs. And I will name names today. I want to recognize all the wonderful work that BC Transplant it has done and is doing. I know Eric Lunn and Eric Chia and Elaine Young are here. But if you think about it, it is a really the most ultimate and then pinnacle of altruism, because donors usually, if you think about it, they're come in extremis. They've been injured in an accident or other causes of death. And the family, in the midst of that tragedy, can find room in their hearts to donate, to help somebody else. I think that's incredible. And we're just facilitators, really, to be part of the process and takes a lot of training, and we need a village to be able to do that. But I think that's something that's so unique to a transplant, because someone who doesn't know the recipient gives a gift and then can save multiple lives. It's incredible, I think.
And a remarkable number of things have to come together to make a donation, a transplant possible, I think. Dr. Nguan.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that in my 20-year career thus far, and I'm sure longer here represented as well, the program has grown by leaps and bounds. And again, that's not due to only us. We might be, some of the pointy end of the spear in some sense, but it really is a growth of a massive system and infrastructure that's allowed us to do this amazing work.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Yi.
Yeah, I think both Anson and Peter hit it right on the head that transplantation is the ultimate marker of a sophisticated first world society. And what we have in BC is one level above that because it's publicly funded and it's accessible to everybody. And there are very few places in the world that you can get world-class care, no matter who you are, without any barrier. So it is the ultimate expression of altruism because we have people who've dedicated their lives in British Columbia to be part of the system, to treat people with deteriorating organ function, to get them to the point where if they need a transplant, they're ready for a transplant. We can get them back home. We do the transplant safely, get them back home. But because we have transplant programs, we've developed excellence and sophistication in all the diagnostics and all the supporting services. So it's really the pointy end of the spear, but it lifts up the whole apparatus of transplantation, drives excellence in many parts of healthcare, provides opportunities for young people to do research, to find their place in academics, in patient care. And so, and it's very fragile. And why I know it's fragile? Because we all travel around the world giving talks, and there are many countries who struggle to have transplant programs because they don't have that social contract that allows, as Peter says, a family in crisis to be willing to donate organs, or a person willing to donate their organ at the time of their death without any expectation of any return.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable thing. That's a social construct that we shouldn't take for granted.
Absolutely. And even as we were talking upstairs earlier, it's not just other countries. There's provinces that, haven't been able to build the infrastructure. So it's really focused on certain centers. Speaking of centers, we're at the Storytelling Centre. So I'm going to ask each of you to tell me a little personal story about how you got here. Why transplant? What's, not the long road to getting here, but the condensed version of why you're doing what you're doing. What was inspiring? Dr. Nguan, you wanted to start us off?
Sure, I'll start. I mean, I was so gratified to be invited to this venue and to be able to chat about this, but I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And then all of a sudden, my 107-year-old grandfather in Hong Kong fell ill. He's in the hospital now, but recovering. But it gave me that chance to reflect about what his life and what it meant to me. But along the course of that, he dedicated his life to community in Hong Kong and China, and then raising a family. And then, of course, my parents brought that same idea and cultural kind of influence when they immigrated to Canada. And I think raising a family, participating in community and philanthropy, and just having that idea of service and generosity was instilled in me early. And I just am so glad to be able to participate in a system where I can provide my very small contribution to that for the population of BC.
Thank you. Dr. P.
I grew up in Montreal, on the east side of Montreal. There were not a lot of Chinese kids in our neighborhood. And I think if you saw an Asian person in a hospital, they'd likely be wearing a uniform or pushing a broom or a cart of some kind. My grandmother was a cook in a small Chinese hospital in Montreal. My grandfather was a guy you needed to know in Chinatown in Montreal, because he was the one who chopped the char siu and the roast pork. So the guy who if you want a nice choice piece of pork, he was the guy to know. My father came to Canada in 1956. He earned $18 a day. He slept in a rooming house in Chinatown in Montreal, working odd jobs until he saved enough money to bring my mother over. Of course, I wasn't around then. And we grew up in a very a very fun household. We never were short of anything, but I grew up with a lot of stories how you had to get educated because they were sort of victims of the war, and you never knew when you had to leave your home and everything behind and run for your life. So he always said, be aware of what's going on, get a good education. So that's my sister and I. Remember, my mother worked in a factory, and one of my most lasting memories was walking my sister to school in the snow in Montreal, and then my mother stopping at the 41 bus stop to take the bus to her factory job, and us going to elementary school down. So from that beginning, I mean, my sister is the smart one in our family. She went on to get a full ride scholarship at Harvard and MIT. And
So you're just slacking.
I'm just a manual laborer. I'm in the service business and the hospitality business. So no, so I finished my training in Montreal, and I think it's very fitting that we're all in transplant, because transplant in the beginning was not what it is now. It was kind of a place where it was marked with a lot of failures in the beginning, and you had to have a sense of optimism, a sense of hope, and sort of the same kind of don't say die attitude that people came to Canada with, and it's grown and it's become more successful as technology develops, and as we build the teams, we know the missing parts that are missing. But in the beginning, it was really bone crushing work, and all of these guys were very modest. But I mean, Anson and I have been here 20 years, and at times, for most of that time, we were the only surgeons, and we're on call every night, and so you have to have a sense of hope to do that. And I think that just reflects what so many families came to Canada for, is to make a better life for themselves. And then from them doing that for us, we want to make a better life for other people. And I see some of our patients in the audience, and we're just so grateful that we live in a society where we can exercise our craft, our education, bring that forward without having all the sort of the dross of having to deal, I practice in the United States, so did Peter, so did Anson, with insurance and
We'll get to why Canada.
needs, right?
We'll get to why Canada. We'll let Dr. Cheung tell us how he got here.
Well, actually, I think that I like the story about how generous Canadians are, and actually the government and policies have benefited me and my family. I grew up in Hong Kong, and I came under a student visa to London, Ontario. I went to a little high school in the suburban London. And then subsequently, my family moved. My father was a professional soccer player. So he came with skill set to become a soccer coach and player. And the whole family immigrated to Winnipeg. So where I finished my studies and so on and so forth, went to the States and, the different area, Stanford and Pittsburgh, to finish my study. Then before returning to Canada, I'm actually the first one. The generosity of the government, actually public funded education, allowed me to be the first one in both sides of the family that had gone to a university. I came from a family that are not, despite what people think, everyone from Hong Kong must be wealthy. It's not. I came from a middle class family and get to where we are. And I hope that, I'm actually examples that I could become a bridge between societies, cultures, and also a little bit storytelling that we benefit from the system. and we are now contributing back to the system, and allow us to be more living in more harmony.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Kim.
Thank you. I have a personal connection to transplant, and that my father had a liver transplant in 1997 in Vancouver at the Vancouver General Hospital, and that affected me tremendously because I could see firsthand what a successful liver transplant can do for the patient. Not only that, but the family. My dad's still alive and well now, and he was able to, he almost died. One thing that we haven't mentioned is that, different from some other fields in medicine, we are dealing with life-saving operations. Patient will die without a transplant, right? Often they will die in a few days without a life-saving transplant. So my dad lives, and he's come to my medical school graduation. Came to our wedding. Held our boys. Just because someone who didn't know him gave me his letter. I can't fathom that generosity. And second of all, we can't do this without mentors. I want to name names. Dr. Stephen Cheung. Always been my supporter, mentor. You have a dream to become a transplant surgeon. You can't do that with other people's help. So I would say thank you, Stephen, and his family, as well as Dr. Scudamore, who's not here, probably not here, I guess, but everyone who's really supported me, although, I wasn't great all the time, but I just want to be able to do the same for someone else's family. That's all.
Amazing. A couple of things you spoke to, connection. I mean, this community is so connected in so many ways. You talked about how many people have to come, and just the people that you stand on the shoulders of, and it goes on from there. Something I learned is that you have to be sick enough, but not too sick to have a transplant, and that line is very, very narrow often, and can, I think Dr. Yi said, and this became important when we were filming, it's not a cure. And so maybe someone can speak to that. I mean, talking about your dad, Dr. Kim, he's still here almost 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's not a perfect solution, right? I mean, it is an excellent solution to provide someone with a new organ, but you need immunosuppressive medication. They can have other problems, right? But it is certainly, it's come such a long way to say that it is very common for the patients to return to normal life. And different from other things that we do in medicine, where we can provide someone with a year or two of good life, patients can have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of excellent life. But it is true, it's not a perfect solution. That's why we have a lot of work to do. As I'm sure everyone will say, we're not, we've come, first liver transplant was performed in the 1960s. Patient died on the operating room table. Patient's name was Benny, young kid, died from bleeding. Since then, there's been many, many advances, right? My mentor from Dallas was involved in the first immunosuppression trial. And then now the operation itself has become more routine, but we still have a long way to go, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have refined the system and our technique and technology to get to where we are. In the old days, we're looking at a survival of getting just through the surgery itself. You're less than half and half. Nowadays, we are in high 90% to get the patient through to the initial surgical part of it. And then with the help of our medical colleagues and nurses and all the allied health, we get the patient to live, at least in the heart, that over 90% the first year. And that is not something that we could achieve, let's say, even 30, 40 years ago. And again, get back to the point that, well, it's not perfect. Definitely not. We're trading one of the problem, failing organ, to have a transplant that require a lot of medication, anti-rejection drugs, that have a lot of side effect, and that led to many problems, infection, cancers, kidney failure and all that. Can we solve that problem? Yes, of course we could. Eventually, with research and bringing all the good people in the system to improve it.
Absolutely. Dr. Nguan, can you talk a little bit about the research? You're certainly quite involved. I know I went out and you were working maybe with animal transplant, or the idea of that at one point, and doing lots of research. And
Yeah, there are many research initiatives going on, I think, within our program and beyond. It encompasses the breadth of, basic science work from the bench to translational clinical research. Some of the work that I've been recently involved in does bring AI into transplantation, which is, I think, a unique thing that we just recently published. We're actually looking at how we can get the readouts from the anesthesia machines during an operation to influence how we manage the patients during the critical parts of the operation, where we're just reperfusing that organ back with blood in the new recipient. And we're just finding now that those very, very early moments of perfusion can actually be very critical in terms of the long-term success, translate to long-term success of the organ. And so I think bringing new technologies like AI, that's obviously a buzzword everywhere, into the fold of transplant is a very important new finding.
yeah, ever-changing, I would imagine. Dr. Yu, so we get back to Canada. I know that you spend a lot of time looking at the statistics and looking at what's happening in other centers around the world. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Canada and why our program is so unique and what we're offering here. You touched on it, but why are you all here?
Canada, it's a big country, and the transplant programs are run. There's only, for example, lung transplant. There's only 4 in the country, and it's not that different for all our programs. There's a few more kidney programs, but heart programs there's very few. And so, providing equity in terms of access to care is a big challenge. But we have some huge advantages here in Canada because of the system that we have. We have regional programs, so all of our programs are very high volume. For example, last year I was invited to go give 2 talks in Taiwan about transplant, and so in 2023 we did 77 lung transplants in British Columbia alone, 5 million people. In Taiwan that year they did 25 for the whole country, 6 centers, and and their results are not as good as ours by even a close margin because of regionalization and high volumes. That we have small numbers of people doing all the operations and small numbers of people looking at all the patients. Speaking, let's say for lung, our median survival in British Columbia, that means you're trading one disease for another. Let's remember, all these patients would be dead within a year to 2 years, every single one. So we're talking about 100% mortality. So our median survival, thanks to BC Transplant, all the people that we work together, the teams that we've assembled for lung transplant after, is 11.6 years, right? As compared to basically 1 if you didn't have one. Now, how does that compare to the world? ISHLT is an organization that collects data from around the planet, and their aggregate median survival is about 6.5 years. And so comparing apples to apples, and I think if you walk down our programs, because of regionalization, because of small numbers of people with dedicated teams, close follow-up, not only do we achieve like 97% survival off the operating room table, whereas before, as Anson said, it was 50-50 whether you even make it out of the room. And now it's almost for certain you're going to make it out of the room. Well, I take that for granted now. I'm looking at where are you going to be 5 years from now? Are you going to have a normal life? Are you going to see your son graduate from medical school? I mean, how do you follow that? I mean, you're going to see him become a transplant surgeon, hold your grandchild. That to me is a big deal. And so when we can exceed the national average in our results and the worldwide, and do this in we only have 5 million people in British Columbia, and we per capita we hit way above our weight. But I think there's a reason for that, is because in many other countries you may have 5 million people, but maybe only 300,000 could afford a transplant or be eligible for a transplant. So that's not the same. So, as we think about careers in medicine, what do you want to accomplish? You want to bring the most good to the most people with the limited time you have on earth. And I think that's what it's all about. And in Canada, we're able to do that. And it's, you know, and we have the privilege of paying very high taxes. And we have KPMG as our main sponsor. And please buy a car from Open Road too. But these are all
Product placement. You did it.
no, but these are all, you know, our partners, right? The medical system doesn't exist in isolation. It's not a construct of the government. It's a construct of our society. And without private enterprise, without people generating an economy that supports public health care, we're not going to have it, right? And so I like to think that transplant's like the canary in the coal mine. If we're doing well, it means the rest of the system is doing well. So far, we're doing well. And I hope past my career horizon and past my lifetime, we'll continue to do well in British Columbia.
Absolutely. What qualities do you think you all share? What qualities are necessary to do this work and to turn up every day? It's hard work. There's challenges. You're on your feet all the time. You're dealing with interfacing with people and technology. It's a lot to juggle. So what are the qualities? You can debate amongst yourselves that you think that you all share.
I think we all pretty much, I think commitment, dedication, to me, is the key.
I think it's important to be very resilient in our field because, like we've already heard, outcomes are not always as expected. It's not 100% guaranteed in any way whatsoever, and there are things to be dealt with all the time, and we have to move beyond that in order to do the next case and the next case, and always aim higher.
Does anybody have a story about a challenge or a patient or a situation that has stuck with you over your time?
I have one. I'll try to keep it very brief. I think a lot of transplantation in British Columbia, the rise in donation can be traced back to one person, Ava Markavort. There was a documentary that was done over 10 years ago. Ava, she had cystic fibrosis. She was a young lady, beautiful young lady from British Columbia, was studying drama at the University of Victoria. She came to my office as a referral for a transplant because she was getting very sick. And with her were two students that were also studying filmmaking. And they asked if they would be able to follow her story. And in my whole life, I've always thought, try to get to yes. Whatever question people ask you, try to get to an affirmative answer and at least work towards yes. So maybe against a lot of people's better judgment, that film did come to fruition. It was ultimately picked up by CBC. It went around the world. It won awards. It was aired on Oprah Winfrey Network. But her story ignited awareness about organ donation. And that really was a tipping point for transplantation in BC. And I think of her all the time because ultimately, when her first transplant started to fail, she needed a second transplant. And she wanted to stay in BC close to her family. And our program was small at the time. And we weren't able to get a donor to present itself, or the organs to present themselves in time for her, and she passed away. And I think sometimes your success is built on your failures and how you don't want to fail again. And I think what she's brought and her life and the fact that she wanted to stay in BC has been a huge driver for us to continue to have these programs, because if not, we're going to have thousands of people critically ill traveling across the country, and most provinces don't have transplant programs. And so for us to have this event, I hope the public can understand that it's not something that you can take for granted, because most Canadians will have to travel and leave their job, leave their families, leave their homes to get a transplant to save their lives. far away from home and maybe die far away from home. But we don't have that in British Columbia. We can serve the province with a central hub.
Amazing. Anybody else got a story that comes to mind?
Well, I was thinking, I guess if we don't have one as a problem, because that means you have not done enough. It's been doing this for 25 years now, and there's too many stories actually to actually, put it this way, harness. I think you have to live with those and then move on, but have to learn from it to actually do a better job. You regret sometimes that you make a decision that may not be the right decision. Sometimes we are too optimistic. It happens to all of us. Or sometimes we could not find something. We could not find an organ that we think the patient would definitely benefit from it. And I think those are the stories that I think they put us and until we are gone.
Right. They stay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Kim or Dr. Nguan, anything stand out?
That's go ahead. I don't really know.
No, nothing.
I'm gonna cry again.
Doesn't have to be a sad story. Maybe this is an elephant in the room, but my understanding is that in the Asian Canadian population, there is a lower donor rate, maybe than in other populations. Does anyone want to talk about perhaps why that might be?
I think the young guys are abusing the older surgeons in the room. I think that is there are a couple of hot button topics. One is the drug crisis in British Columbia. How does that impact the organ donation? And the other one is, do people who draw from the well, do they contribute to the well? And that's what you're asking. And that's not only the Asian community, the South Asian community, a lot of communities. So there's many reasons for the existing gap. I think BC Transplant, the organization that educates the public, that approaches families for donation, is trying to bridge that gap. But I think time will do it, because I think there are belief systems and religions that prohibit or limit organ donation, because there's a sense that you have to go to the afterlife in intact state. But I think as the generations evolve, it's become more mainstream in all cultures to donate their organs, to realize that life as we know it here, once it ends, you don't actually need your organs anymore. But I think more importantly is that a lot of people who come to Canada are leaving countries where life is horrible, and they're coming here for a reason. And some of the reasons why they come here is because they're leaving a place where they don't trust the government, they don't trust the medical system, they don't trust the military, the police. There's no sense of justice. And to work through those trust issues, to relieve yourself of the baggage of growing up in a country where there's limited freedom and access to care, and to the point where you would commit the ultimate act of altruism. I think it's a huge expectation on anybody, but it's happening. It's happening. And I think as the generations proceed on, that gap that we're talking about right now will be completely evaporated.
Fantastic. Well, and as is the gap, the Asian Canadian population of your teams, and, has grown exponentially as well, as a counterpoint.
Yeah.
Any audience questions at this point?
I don't really have a question, but I have a statement I'd like to make. January 30th of 2015, I had a double lung transplant. So believe me when I say I know Dr. Yee up close and personal. And so it's been 10 years. And when I had my transplant, it was a record year. There was 35 transplants done that year. And now 2023, we're looking at 77. So the system has doubled. So it's just an amazing thing. So I thank the doctors for all your work that you do, and BC Transplant for sharing that load as well. Thank you.
Is there an age limit of donation? Like, if, as a senior, can we still donate our organs?
73.
So we actually don't have an age limit at all. I think that we look at the organ function. Also, same as recipients, we don't really set a age for who could actually receive an organ. It depends on the patient's health and so on and so forth. Donation definitely not. I mean, the organs that actually even at a very advanced age are still good for transplantation, such as cornea, many of the kidneys. We, as the heart program, initially started early days. We hardly ever take an organ that is over than 25. Now our mean age for donation actually in our province is in the 40s average, and we have taken organs that even from donor that are in the late 50 and 60, providing the functions are good, and there's no other anatomical reason that is not be a good organ for transplantation.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how will animal transplant impact what you guys are doing? Because I know there's a lot being done in the kidney world, and kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I personally am very hot on xenotransplant. That's the transplant of genetically modified animals, organs, and tissues to humans. The FDA has approved their first clinical trial of kidney transplantation from these types of specialized pigs to humans, and those results are actually very good. They're extending; they're lasting 6 months or longer. So I think it's very encouraging, but still very early work. I mean, if this gets off the ground and becomes commonplace and actually becomes very durable, you can sense a big change in not just transplant, but in all of medicine, where if you have the inkling of some sort of disease like diabetes or kidney failure or whatever, you can start replacing parts like on a car, as opposed to waiting until very close to death before having to intervene. So it provides many more options, and it's definitely an area to study more closely.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if we could figure out a way to not have to, like where you could wash the blood type from an organ and use the organ, then we're really rocking, right? Like, because the blood typing makes it more challenging.
Oh, you're feeding me a
I'm asking.
ball.
I'm just, you can tell me I'm wrong, but
Yeah, absolutely.
we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think blood type is one of the initial hurdles. You need to be blood type matched for the most part in order to receive a compatible organ, or at least blood type compatible. There are companies that are working on technologies to render that obsolete, so you can convert A and B type blood and organs to ABO type, so you can transfer an organ or blood to any suitable recipient. And I think that's an amazing hurdle that's being knocked down as well.
Great. Perfect.
With all the cutbacks with research in the U.S. happening right now, will that affect any technology or advancements going forward for transplants globally or here?
We're already seeing a bit of a reverberation of some decisions that are being made in the United States. I think this will be short-lived. I think research is very mobile, and it can be done anywhere where people can move their brains in their laboratories. I think what is happening in the U.S. is somewhat tragic for the pipeline of innovation and new medications, new technologies, because it will just drive that development elsewhere. Capital is mobile, intellectual capital is very mobile. I think in the long run, from humankind, it'll be a tiny bump in the road.
Great. I'll ask a question about work-life balance. Possible? How do you achieve that?
There's no balance. There's always imbalance. I think. So I suppose I'm not sure it's even doable. I'm probably doing a terrible job. But I think I do want to say that it's somewhat possible because we have a team. I for the liver transplant program, I have 4 other surgeons who are more than capable, more capable than I am, so that we work together very well to cover each other and to make sure that the surgeon is ready to go. We have a dedicated call schedule, and that because what you don't want is a tired surgeon who's been working all night operating on you. So we have a specific schedule to relieve somebody so that that day, if the liver is available, the person who's doing the operation is the best surgeon for that day. I think that's really important. I think we do have a bigger team that supports us. And also, I noticed Megan O'Brien. Hey, good to see you. She's one of our excellent OR nurses, right? I think the work environment is really important, I think, because we have people like Megan, other members of the team that create such a positive environment. So that, yes, we do spend a lot of time at work, but it is fun and also invigorating to be able to pursue excellence together. So I think, to be honest, I'm sure like my wife will say that I'm doing a terrible job, but I think all we can do is our best. Really, this is more than just a job, a profession. I think that's one thing I will say. You asked what is the common trait. It's not a job where you come and clock in and clock out. You can't. It's as a way too high stakes, way too high intensity. Way too demanding physically, mentally, psychologically, like dexterity, technically, to be just a job, and it's more of a calling or commitment, I think. So it is what it is. I think you just have to. If it's not your calling, then it is not your calling. You just have to, because you need some people who will do an excellent job. Because mediocre job is not enough, right? Good enough.
No. I think we did have to turn off the Motown in Dr. Yee's surgery while we were filming, right? So there is some fun. Is that true?
Yeah, we have a soundtrack that we play. It used to be we do all the transplants in the middle of the night, and now we've transitioned to a safer alternative of daytime transplants, which is really the first in Canada and amongst the first in the world to recognize patient safety is a huge component. But so we had we have this soundtrack that tries to keep everybody light, and there's no windows in the OR. It's like a casino, so you don't know how beautiful it is outside. But we had to shut it down because of copyright infringement when Sheona and her team were playing. But to quote one of my very best friends who just recently retired as CEO of a very large company in Canada, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's life integration. And I think our work is part of our life. And I think all of us have been very fortunate that we found partners that have bought into that, and that they support us, and then us through our work we support them. I think if you're concerned about work-life balance, you should find another job and not be a transplant surgeon. And so many of us, Stephen Cheung's in the room here, and for many years Stephen and I worked through the middle of the night. We had very small teams in the beginning. Anson and I were a team of one, then we became two. Whoa, that was huge, right?
You doubled up.
Yeah. But to be on call, it's sort of like being a transplant surgeon in British Columbia in the early days. Is like being a fireman in a town built of wood houses. I mean, things would happen all the time, and you'd have to take care of patients coming in. You'd have to take care of patients who've had their transplants, who are waiting for their transplants. It was quite an interesting and fun time. Oh. And I think one of the reasons why we have good results is because we have people who've done it all, and it's like people who are at the top of their company, but they started out as the teller in the bank, and they've worked their way through, and they can do every job in the business. So I think there's a certain satisfaction, that sort of pride of ownership, and I think young people should just find a career that they can find that work-life integration and find that sense of purpose and meaning, and they're going to do great.
Yeah.
The question, I think, is not should it be asking us, actually should ask our spouse.
Fair. Okay.
One of the problem, I think, with nowadays, even though we have partners nowadays, it's not actually a lot of young people are going into our profession because they recognize that it's not a lifestyle profession. And without that, they will be doing something else. Not even medicine, they will be doing something else to make a lot more money, have a better lifestyle. So we have to encourage our younger generation to actually further educate them. I think that's one thing that we need to do, to let them learn about this how meaningful this profession is, and get them into it, or else we'll be the dying breed.
I don't think it's an accident that all four of us are coming from immigrant backgrounds, and that sense that you're never gonna give up, and just gonna keep going. Doesn't matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter how many people think that you're gonna fail. How many times you do fail, because if you come from that sort of background, and the weight of the generations that come before you, the weight of all the people who supported you your whole life, you're not going to drop that baton. You're going to grab onto it, and you're going to run as hard as you can for as long as you can. And that's why I'm so proud that we have the programs at the quality that we have in British Columbia. And I don't think it's an accident that we have this event, and it's great that we can have this as part of Asian Heritage Month.
Well, you could have rehearsed that as the end, so that was fantastic. Nicely done.
It's not.
I want to thank you personally for all you've given, all your generosity in the last couple of years, participation, work, sharing, and thank you for coming today. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.